What's up, summoners? It's Colby Cheese, and it's time for a video of the new champion, Syndra. This will be my first impressions of her, and right off the bat, TLDR, she is not the easiest champion to play due to the synergy between her abilities. Now, it's gonna feel really natural for you to try and use your Q into your W and then your E right afterwards. However, when you use your W, which picks up the minions and throws them, it'll throw them out of the range of your pushback. Also, the same thing happens with her Q, and so a lot of times you may find yourself missing the ball knockback stun on her pushback ability. But overall, if you are able to use her abilities correctly and land them all, she will do a lot of burst damage. She has a huge amount of utility. So in the right hands, she's going to be a really strong champion, but if you're unable to combo her correctly or land all of her abilities in a critical situation, she's going to be really bad. So I feel like she's going to be great in top level players' hands or people that have really got her down and have her experience. But for people who are just now trying her out or maybe not great at the mechanical skills of the game, are going to have a lot of trouble using her correctly. So it comes down to needing one of her balls in front of you ahead of time to use it effectively, because you can't really use that ball to do damage and also use it to knock back and stun one of your enemies. This is mostly due to the range on her knockback. So let me just go ahead and talk about her abilities in case you're a little bit confused on what exactly everything does. So her Q is a very low cooldown nuke, similar to you could say like a Karthus Q. It's actually much bigger AoE, so it's a lot easier to hit. It's a very effective harassing tool. And the one thing to note about Syndra, however, is that you really have to pay attention to her mana cost. You can't just sit there and spam Q to last hit minions, which actually seems natural to do on a champion with such low cooldown and an ability that makes it so easy to last hit minions with, because of the fact that once you run out of mana, it's going to be really easy for them to zone you out. So you need to focus on last hitting the minions with your auto attacks and then using your Q and other abilities just for harassing out the enemy champion, which she is actually extremely good at doing. So once you learn how to harass with your abilities, you should have no problem just last hitting with your auto attacks. Now, her W has a lot of utility with it and can also do a ton of damage. What it does is it'll either pick up an enemy minion or it'll pick up one of your balls that you have laying on the ground, and you can then toss it at the enemy or wherever you want. So one cool thing to do with the W, and I've got some footage of this here, is have your support champion or someone else lay down a ward right over the enemy's blue buff, and as soon as it spawns, you can grab that blue buff, walk away with it, and toss it as far away as possible. It'll take the blue a while to walk back, and a lot of times they may even decide that you stole the blue buff, kind of like when Blitz will pull it over the wall and take it. So they may not even do their blue early on, and then you can run and grab it later. So that's a really cool trick to do. Overall though, it's a great ability for just doing some long range damage to your enemies and slowing them down for an engage. It's actually kind of hard to dodge just due to the fact that it's kind of deceptive how long the range is going to be, especially if you toss it out and you start running backwards. It doesn't seem like it's going to hit you, but then bam, it lands on your face and then it hurts. So really great spell, a lot of fun to use. The only thing I didn't like about it is a lot of times I would try and pick up a certain creep or a ball or something like that, and I would end up picking up something else. So it tends to pick up in a long range around where you click. Now her E is a pushback, and the way it works is if you just push back an enemy, it won't do any damage to them. It'll simply do that, push them back. But if there is a ball in your pushback, it'll knock that ball back really far, and if it hits anyone, it does pretty good damage, and it'll also stun them for 1.5 seconds in addition to the pushback effect. So a really amazing spell if you can get a ball, but the problem with this spell, in my opinion, is that it's just so difficult to use properly, consistently. Sometimes it's going to be easy to use if you're lined up perfectly, but that's not always going to be the case. You're not always going to have your Q cooldown, or you're going to use that Q to do damage rather than put it right in front of your face to knock it into someone. So yes, it can be very effective, when you have the time to actually think about it and use it properly. But sometimes in the heat of battle, when a lot of things are going down, it's going to be really hard to use effectively. But overall, really amazing utility spell on paper. So her ultimate is it's just gigantic damage overall. It's just a single target nuke is really all it is when it comes down to it. The main thing is you don't want to use it right away in combat unless you already have 2 or 3 balls in play. So generally you want to save it for the middle of the fight after you've used 1 or 2 balls. And at level 13 with a few items, you can do around 800 damage. As you see, I can just extremely high, especially when you notice I basically 2-shot this Annie with a Q and my ultimate. She's only like a couple levels lower than me since she's in the jungle and I was in middle. Finally, the passive will just basically make each of her basic abilities stronger. So her Q does more damage to champions, her W slows a longer amount, and the E will actually have a wider cone of pushback. Alright, let's discuss runes, masteries, and items. For Syndra, I'll generally go for a kind of mana regen early game setup as well as some magic resist for my runes. And that'll help me get past those early levels. She does have, like I said, those mana regen problems, but once you start getting blues and pick up your items, it should get a little bit better. Now, as far as masteries, it's just your standard AP setup, which is 2109, going for the mana regen and all that other good stuff. For your items. Now this is going to depend on your lane sometimes, but mostly I would like to pick up a Doran's Ring after my Boots 3 pots, and then go for a Chalice against any AP champion that I'm laning against. If I'm against an AD, which is very rare, I'll just go for 2 Dorans. But mostly go for that Chalice. Instead of finishing up Athene's early, I'll go for a Death Cap. And then into a Ryle's. Most of the time I found the Ryle's was really nice because if you do whiff some of her abilities, it's really good to have that extra slowing and the HP to really help you out. Since you do go for just 1 Doran's, you want a little bit of extra HP. And then I'll finish up Athene's as my 3rd item. Anything after that, if the game goes long enough and if you get fed, you can go for either a Void Staff or a Zhonya's at that point. So some final notes on Syndra. Mana regen, again, is very big on her, so learning the last hit only with your auto attacks early is a lot more important than some other AP champions. So use your Q just for harass rather than just last hitting early on until you get your blue buff, and that way you don't put yourself in a vulnerable position to be zoned out. Also, it feels odd trying to finish people off with Ignite because the Ignite range is actually just a bit lower than her Q and W range. So a lot of times I found myself missing that. Just a side note, but another thing that was really frustrating about her. Overall, not my favorite champion personally, as she does have potential for failure a lot of times. And I think overall you'll have fun playing her, but you might find yourself frustrated in a lot of situations where you miss kills by missing critical abilities. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like button, and I'll see you around for the next one. This is Colby Cheese. Peace out. Yo! Subscribe to my channel, or check out some of my other videos. Peace out.
Awesome to the max.